Welcome back to the workshop. It's Friday and I've got the weekend in front of me. Work is kind of closing down for the weekend, and man, it's beautiful. I got the doors open, ready to make some sawdust. And I'll tell you, I have been very active in the workshop lately. Went out and got this new toy here, which I'm sure that if you've seen my last couple of videos, you know where this is going. Man, I'm just consumed with learning how to do this. I have made, oh man, I've probably made 8 or 9 bowls and vases. I've got a number of them upstairs already, and quite a few in my graveyard here as I make mistakes and learn things the hard way. But at any rate, that's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna make so actually what we're gonna do is we're gonna make one of these. I call this my Freddy vase. I love the colors. If that doesn't remind you of a certain sweater, then you are not a child of the 80s. So yeah, we're gonna make one of these, this exact design, except we're not gonna blow it out on the neck there, right? What I'm gonna do is walk you through the whole process that I use. It borrows from all kinds of people on the interwebs, mainly Jerry Bennett. And if you do any kind of segmented bowl turning, you know who Jerry Bennett is. Everybody I talk to knows who Jerry Bennett is. He's the one that invented, or at least made popular, the Wedgie Sled, which I'll talk about that as we get going here. But yeah, I've got a bit of a system. I've got a bit of a routine, and whether or not it's, you know, the best is going to be up to you to decide. I can do what works for me. For me, it starts over here on the computer, and hopefully when I edit this, I'll switch over to a direct feed from the monitor. But I use SketchUp to do my design work. And then I will pull that snapshot of that SketchUp design over into Excel. It's actually Google Sheets. And here is my sort of template for getting the design pumped out. Now you'll notice, in fact, this is a great illustration here. The right side of the bowl in this diagram is the design that I followed for the one that blew out its neck. On the left-hand side, I've modified that and made all of those walls thicker. And so that is the design that we're gonna be following today. And you can see I've got very little that I have to fill in here. I just give it the outside width, or I'm sorry, I give it the thickness, and I give it the ring diameter, and I get everything else calculated for me, all the way down to the cost of the bowl. In this case, making it out of walnut and Paduke. That was a $5 mistake that I made sitting over in my windowsill. Not too bad. So anyway, I'm probably not going to narrate directly from here on out. I'll probably do a voiceover because I like to listen to music. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend my day in the workshop making sawdust, listening to music, maybe listening to some podcasts, but I'll keep the cameras rolling so you guys can come along with me. As much as I like the Freddy bowl, I've got some purple heart and some hard maple that I want to use for this one. I think it'll be real pretty. So I'm going to start breaking this lumber down. So I'm ripping the maple just a little bit wider than 3/4 of an inch, and then I'll go over to the planer and thickness all of this down to a uniform thickness. It's not crucial, to be honest with you, that it's uniform, but it makes assembly a little bit easier. So I hope you guys like this video. It's a new thing that I'm trying here where I'm literally not gonna cut any of the steps out. I'm gonna fast forward them, of course, you know, so that the video is not 2 hours long, but I'm putting in everything, including me going and changing the music, because that's important. So if you enjoyed this video, let me know. Let me know in the comments, or hit like and give me a subscribe. Thanks. You can't see it too well, but there's all kinds of sawdust flying up in my face. Clearly my my dust collection is not working, so here I am going over and checking all the various ports to make sure that they're not leaking, and I got plenty of pressure up there, but I got no pressure down here. Okay, well, let's see. Yeah, that's the problem. So yeah, getting that hose cleaned out improves things a great deal. And by the way, I'm back to cutting hard maple. I shorted myself by one strip here, so thankfully the planer is still set at the same height. You know, it's really important to make sure that you've got enough lumber all dimensioned before you have to switch over to the wedgie sled setup, because it involves changing the blade, it involves changing the throat. Yeah, so it's just better, you know, to not have to go back and forth between configurations on the table saw. So what I'm doing here is marking one face and one edge of each one of these strips. That's going to be important for us to know the orientation of the segments after they come out. And I also mark which edge needs to be facing up when I'm cutting. That's usually pretty obvious, but when you start doing the 3/4 inch strips, it's less obvious. And I just like to have a kind of a routine where I always look down and make sure that I've got my marks looking at me that says this is where you should be facing up. So I go through here and I mark all the boards as such, and yeah, then we'll move to the next step. Actually, before we move to the next step, I've got to take care of that blade change I mentioned a minute ago. Get this ripping blade off of here and put a nice cross-cut blade. This is a fairly expensive blade that I got, and it's worth it. It puts just a glass smooth surface on the cut, and since these are end grain cuts that we're trying to glue together, I think it's worth having a good blade. Well, I lost some footage. I've had about 12 minutes of footage of me cutting all of these segments and kind of explaining how this little caliper dealie works. It was great footage. I mean, it was, I'll never replicate it. So anyway, I'm gonna set these over in my sort of glue up area, and I'll come back over here and cut the rest of the segments. The rest of the segments that I've got to cut, some of them are tiny, tiny, tiny segments, and so it's really tedious. But anyway, yeah, I'll get to it, and you'll get your footage. So I mentioned the Wedgie Sled in the last couple of videos, and I think I've called it out by name a couple of times in this one. If you haven't checked out Jerry Bennett, he deserves all the credit. And boy, if you Google, you know, Wedgie Sled or look that up here on YouTube, you'll find thousands of folks that use this setup. Some have modified it more than others. I'm really using something very close to exactly what Jerry designed. The point, though, is that the two fences together create the angle that you need to have a perfect ring, and it doesn't matter really the trueness of your miter slot or how trued up your blade is to the sled. All that matters is the relationship between those two fences. And the reason why we're really careful to mark one side of each strip before we start cutting it into segments is those marks will tell us whether the cut came from the lower fence or the upper fence. And as long as we alternate the segments in the ring to come off of each fence alternately, if that makes sense, then like I said, none of the other potential gotchas can get you. You know, if you have a blade that's not quite at 90 degrees, if you don't have a true miter slot, like I said, those things are taken out of the equation. This is just fantastic. The little fence that you see me working there, that is, well, I thought it was my idea, but then I immediately found that lots of other people have done almost the exact same thing. I bought a $20 digital caliper from Lowe's and rigged it onto that fence such that it would give me a very precise down to the thousandth of an inch measurement from the from whatever 0 point that I have. And what I tend to do is every time I make a cut, I zero that caliper out, and my next cut I just incrementally go up or down however much my spreadsheet tells me I need to. And boy, it's super accurate, super accurate. So this is the top ring of the bowl, ring number 11. And I ran out of Purple Heart. I could have ripped out some more, and I could have gone with an equal amount of maple and Purple Heart like the rest of the bowl. But I thought, maybe this will look cool. So I thought I'd put it together and look at it. And yeah, I like it. I'm going to go ahead and glue that up. So this is my technique here. I've got this piece of angle iron. That's just to kind of keep things aligned and from falling over. And I'll get my rings all cleaned up, all the fuzzies kind of knocked off of them, and then put them on this piece of tape, sticky side up, and then I can use that tape to really quickly get this into a ring and then onto my little glue up board here. So there we go. And usually I get the rubber bands on here beforehand, but get that tape out of the way, and then pull the pins, and away we go, on to the next ring. So what I'm doing here is, as I pull these segments out of their container, I'm making sure that they're aligned so that the marked side is facing up. That just gets all of the pieces in the right orientation, and I don't have to worry about that when I'm assembling the ring. I'll get my piece of tape down there. This time I'm going to remember to get the rubber band on first. And now I can just start grabbing these guys, alternating between Purple Heart and Maple, and get them on that tape. This all goes relatively quickly. Using quite a bit of glue here. I'd rather use too much and have it squeeze out than have a weak joint. So get these aligned, and away we go. We're just trucking through the segments. I got 11 segments to do for this vase, which isn't too bad. These segments here are pretty easy. The really big segments, or I'm sorry, I keep saying segments, I mean rings. The really big rings are difficult, and the really small rings are difficult. And this one does have quite a few small rings, so we're going to get to those in a minute. But these all sort of come together pretty easily. It's all about the angle. Without that sled and the dead-on accuracy that sled gives me, you just fight this. It would be horrible. But with the dead-on accuracy of these cuts, the rings they come together without needing a whole lot of clamping pressure. You really don't need to stack a whole bunch of rubber bands on there or anything like that. They've got very precisely cut angles, and again, I'll mention that high quality cross-cut blade, giving me that nice smooth cut. That certainly doesn't hurt. And I put quite a few coats of polyurethane on this board that I'm using for the glue ups. This board has evolved over time. It's just every time I build a bowl or a vase, I seem to enhance it a little bit, but it's working really well for me. So one of the things that I really considered doing, and I considered doing it for this video, was keeping a really accurate log of the time it takes me to get through this process. And that's normally it's very hard for me to quantify that, because I have a tendency to work in a very start and stop, spurty sort of way. I'll grab 5 minutes here, and then I'll go back to doing something else, and I'll grab another 5 minutes there. But I am curious how much time goes into all of this, because I'm thinking about maybe putting up an Etsy store or going to some craft fairs, things like that. It's a thought that's entering my mind. But I want to know how much effort it really is. I think I can finish a vase about this complex in I'm gonna put it at 4 hours. That's including dry time. Well, we'll see. So as I'm recording this is April 30th, 2021, And I got this lathe on the 10th. I know that because I had to sign up well in advance for a class on bolt turning at Rockler. They've got a very limited slots for those classes, and so I know it was April 10th. So I've had this lathe for exactly 3 weeks. I suppose if you go back and look at the footage at the beginning of this video showing the bowls and the vases that I've made, I've been a little bit obsessed. Just a little bit obsessed. I mean, it's not a bad thing, and it's just kind of the nature. That's how I am. I tend to dive into things pretty full bore. So I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm not sure that you want to be watching this video in particular, looking for a how-to on turning segmented bowls. There's a lot of channels out there that there's guys that have been doing this their entire lives. That can be able to give you a lot better insights than I can. What I can provide you, though, what I can show you is what can you do 3 weeks after you've bought a lathe and you've never touched a lathe before that. And I hope that's motivating. I hope that maybe somebody decides, hey, I can do this. It's a pretty fast ramp up, because it is, and I'm certainly not in any way special other than my tendency to get a bit obsessive about my hobbies. But I'm certainly not unique in that regard. You'll notice that with these really small rings, I've deviated a little bit from my normal process. I'm not using the angle iron because it just kind of it just doesn't help. I'm not sure. It doesn't help as much. And then I also don't use the assembly board. And maybe I should, because boy, in fast forwarded, this doesn't look quite as awful as it is. But this is really awkward trying to get these rubber bands on here without that board. But I just don't have holes small enough. So there we go. All 11 rings assembled. They're ready to be sanded. But I'm going to let these completely dry before I do that. So I'm going to go make dinner, and I'll talk to you guys from your perspective, I'll talk to you guys in a couple seconds. So the minimum length board that I can send through the drum sander is 2 3/8 of an inch. And a lot of these rings are much shorter than that. So I've got them all on this little sled. I will tell you, I still do deal with a little bit of snipe. It's not bad though, and I can work it out with just a little bit of manual sanding. In this case, I didn't actually have to do any. It worked pretty well. So that's it for the small ones. Now we'll send the big rings through. This used to be the hardest step of the entire project. Now it's maybe the easiest. Gotta love this sander. Okay, so the base of this vase is solid. It's not segmented. I'm just gonna grab a piece of Purple Heart, and I'll knock the corners off of this guy so that I'm not spending quite as much time on the lathe. So just come over here to the bandsaw and rough cut that out. And then mount it on the lathe to turn it round. For this, I'm going to use my bull gouge. The video on this is really shaky. I have no idea why. It's not like I've got the camera mounted to the lathe itself, but boy, this is really bad. At any rate, we'll get this turned, and then what I've got to do is form a tenon on one side. So as soon as I get this rounded out, looks good. Now I'm going to come to the other side and form a tenon that my chuck can grab onto, and come in here and make that dovetail. And there we go. We're ready to mount this on my chuck. Easy peasy. Last thing I need to do is form a flat face to start gluing the segments onto. I don't need the flat face to go all the way across, and I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to give enough to put my first ring segment. The throat of this vase is going to be so narrow that you can't see down inside it, at least not without a lot of effort. And so it's one of the attractive things about this design is I don't actually have to turn the inside of this vase. There would be no point.
And so, so yeah, I'm not too worried about what that looks like down there. So we get my first ring on here. All I'm worried about is getting it centered, and I'm going to use the calipers there to just measure in from the outside at various points until I've got it nice and centered. And then I'll put it on the lathe to actually press the glue out, right? So that's my clamp. Works pretty well. And now we just rinse and repeat 10 more times. I kind of enjoy this part of the process. It caters well to my love of multitasking. I can spend 5 minutes gluing a ring on to the vase and then get it clamped up and go do something else for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is more than enough for that glue to set. Could probably actually go a lot faster than that if I wanted to, but yeah, it works well for me. I come over to my office here and watch YouTube or edit videos. It's actually what I'm doing right now, or whatever. So this is probably the last ring that I'm going to get on tonight. The rest of them will get glued up in the morning, and then we'll shape and polish and finish up this vase. So we'll talk to you guys in the morning.
Yeah, good morning. So obviously it's the next day, and I'm gonna get back to it. I had kind of hoped that this was gonna be a one-day build, but just wasn't quite able to pull that off. Didn't feel like staying up super late last night, and dinner sort of took me out of my groove. So anyway, we're gonna finish this up this morning, get it turned, get it polished up, and first order of business is to pull this off and put the next ring on. So I've been a little inconsistent in how I've filmed these rings. I'll talk you through it a little bit. Let me just put you right down here on the workbench, and we'll put this next ring on. It's a little tedious. I'll show you.
Okay, so the idea here is that get a good layer of glue on here and then start to squeeze it out. The more glue you squeeze out, the tighter the bond and less you can make little micro adjustments. So we're just gradually getting closer to perfect here. I do clean that squeeze out because I'm really paying close attention to the intersections of that checkerboard pattern. If I get those lined up, then it's going to be centered. So I'll go here and I'll check the centering using my calipers, and sure enough, it looks pretty good. Don't need to move it much. I will take it over to the lathe and double check the centeredness of it and move on to the next ring. Remember I mentioned that I still deal with a little bit of snipe coming out of the drum sander. This ring suffered from that. I thought I was clear, but it's a little bit not flat, and you can feel it when you turn the lathe on and put your finger up there. It's not true, and so I'm just truing it up, and away we go. That's not a problem. I love how easy it is to fix these kind of mistakes. Now that we're flaring out again, I have to turn the vase over to get a good visual of those checkerboard intersections. And here we go, final segment, or final ring. I'll get this guy on here, and I'll probably wait a full 2 hours before I start turning this guy. I probably could start turning after an hour, but I've got some things to do around the house, and so I'm going to do those. And then turning this will be surprisingly fast. So every project I'll touch up my bowl gouge a little bit. It doesn't take much since I sharpen it so often. In fact, I don't even hone it. I just run it across the sharpening wheel a couple times and get to work. I'm pretty new to the bowl gouge. I'm still learning, technique, but I realized very quickly after getting started with carbide tools that those carbide tools, man, they really tear up the surface of the piece. And the bowl gouge, man, if used properly, which I'm still trying to get the hang of, it can leave a glass smooth surface. You can really start sanding at 180 grit if you want. Anyway, all I'm doing here is connecting the dots. I'm trying not to take off any more material than is necessary to get a smooth transition from one ring to the next. And then when I'm done doing that, I'll come back and just kind of smooth things out, and that's all there is to it. This is a pretty simple step in the whole process. It's really the easiest part. And that's pretty much it. I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time shaping this bowl. I've got quite a bit of sanding to do. I'm not going to make you sit through that. We're going to fast forward to the end to where I get the polishing step started. This is what I use. This is what they showed me at my bowl turning class at Rockler, and I mean, it doesn't get any easier than this. We've got a polishing compound, which I'm applying now. And the key here is when I'm buffing it out, I'm pressing pretty hard, and I'm heating the material just through the friction. And I'll do 2 layers of that, and then I'll put on this this Shellawax cream. This is a shellac product that's also I'm not really sure what all it's got in there. It's got wax and shellac, and it's the final step. That's it. This is all I'm going to do. So we put this guy on here. And again, we will polish it to a high sheen and put a fair amount of pressure on there, and it comes out like this. All right, so let's get this mouth finished off. I'm gonna cut this nice and thin and make it look all delicate. Nobody has to know that if they were able to see down into the inside of the vase, it's completely blocky and unfinished, but we'll give that impression up here that it's a delicate flower. And again, we're just going to step through these sanding grits all the way up to 600, and then I'll grab my rag and apply that same polish and top coat, and this guy's done. And that'll just about do it. There is one more step. I've got to cut the tenon off of this. I didn't film that, but I've got a flush cut saw that took care of it pretty easily. And that's it. We're done. I don't have a clever name for this vase. Maybe my sister said that it kind of reminds her of Alice in Wonderland, so maybe this is Alice. Anyway, had a lot of fun making this. It was almost exactly a 24-hour project from start to finish. And I think I'm pretty spot on in terms of the actual time spent is about 4 hours. So yeah, what a cool way to spend a Friday afternoon. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching.